My name is Doug White. I'm a veteran and retired first responder with over 30 years of combined service. I wrote and published Hiding in Plain Sight, the truth about trauma, service, and the way forward, to fulfill a mission, starting honest and necessary conversations about the challenges faced by veterans, first responders, and their families. These are the challenges that emerge when a life of selfless service inevitably collides with the complex realities of the human condition. Through my book, Hiding in Plain Sight, and the Tell This Story platform, my mission is to create a space where voices are heard and hope is shared for those still hiding in plain sight. Each week on Tell This Story, I sit down with fellow veterans, first responders, and their loved ones to unpack these struggles and work together on finding a way forward. Today on Tell This Story, I'm joined by my friend Jason Palamara. Jason is a U.S. Navy veteran, having served in support of Operation Noble Anvil aboard the USS Theodore Roosevelt. He's a retired New York City Police Department cold case homicide detective with 20 years of experience in forensic criminal investigations. Jason has served as a peer support counselor with the NYPD and currently serves as a volunteer crisis intervention counselor and trainer with the Long Island Crisis Center. Jason is also a John C. Maxwell certified life coach, teacher, speaker, and training. Jason co-authored a book on police wellness and resilience with Barbara Rubel entitled Living Blue, Helping Law Enforcement Officers and Their Families Survive and Thrive from Recruitment to Retirement. Alongside his wife, Veronica, Jason started the Living Blue Apparel company. Their passion is in doing their part to ensure that those who serve and protect feel connected to those who support them. Ultimately, they hope to strengthen the health and wellness in law enforcement community. Jason, my friend, welcome to Tell This Story.
Thanks for having me, Doug.
Man, this is a big day for me. I don't even know where to start. I should start with, how we planned this. Your book that you and Barbara did, Living Blue. I need to hold it up for anybody who's watching the clips. I got this book about a year ago after I retired and went through a relatively dark period looking for mission and purpose, like most of us do when we retire. And I would like to say that the different colored tabs in here are for different ideas and subjects that I found. But it's actually because I ran out of tabs and started grabbing anything that I had a hold of. So I've turned this into a heavily tabbed, heavily marked, and heavily coloring book, really. This was one of the larger impacts in the very beginning of my post-retirement venture and into this purpose now and onto this platform. So it's a big honor for me to be speaking to you today, and it's been great over the last couple of months connecting with you and speaking with you on these topics. So again, just happy that you're here. I want to start with, I'm sure people have heard you on podcasts before and are familiar with you on LinkedIn and your space that you're in and that we're in now. And hopefully a lot of people have read through the book. But one of the things I'd like to talk to you about is you're obviously a veteran, but I want to get into the foundational days of your law enforcement career. I mean, you did 20 years with NYPD, and your beginning is not really the beginning that a lot of people had. So if you would you dive into your academy experience?
Yeah, absolutely, Doug. And I tell you, and for your listeners who see clips as well, your book is making its way into being heavily marked up as well, my friend. So
thank you.
Yeah, my police academy beginning is shared by many in New York that joined the NYPD. And we're lucky, I say lucky or unlucky enough to be in September 11th, 2001 Academy class. So I started on July 2nd, 2001, and shortly after, as we all know, the attacks of September 11th happened. And, I say lucky or unlucky, I'm fortunate, and I've said this before, I'm fortunate to have been on the job, as that is my introduction. Would never wish that upon anybody or want to ever repeat something like that. But it really was the catalyst to creating the type of officer that I would be, and really opened my mind and changed the perspective of what I had in my inexperienced self thought of what policing was. So it really was it was you hear the expression thrown right into the fire. That's exactly what that was. So I saw that, like I said, I saw it on July 2nd, a little over 2 months later. Attacks happened, and they pulled us out of the academy class to assist in a number of different things, right? From directing traffic, which was where I spent a lot of my days, to crowd control or cleanup efforts. A lot of folks went down to the morgue. I thankfully never had to, go down to the morgue, but saw my fair share of, we'll just say, recovery. Um, and after being out for a time, they threw us right back into the academy as if nothing had really happened. And I say nothing had really happened. It was right back to curriculum, right back to learning.
Mm-hmm.
There was absolutely no conversation around what we had just been exposed to as essentially children. And we were in the academy, but we were kids. We were young, and we were introduced to this job with 9/11, and there was absolutely no type of debrief, no peer support, no intervention, no critical incident stress management, absolutely nothing in the realm of mental behavioral health for us. It was right back to curriculum. And that, was something I was unaware of as it was happening, being so young. But now, in retrospect, in hindsight, I see how damaging that is. And thankfully, departments and our culture, our law enforcement culture, our first responder culture, our military culture is really making changes, and things like that are part of what things like that are embedded now in our cultures, which is much better, much healthier.
Do you think if they had those things back then, do you think if they had addressed it, do you think anyone in your academy class would have raised their hand and said, hey, let's talk about this?
Likely not. Probably not. But, and we could find all we want about, woulda, coulda, shoulda, what might have happened, might not have happened. But just a simple inquiry into how we were, I think, goes a long way in letting those that you lead see that they're cared for in an authentic way by those that they follow. So just a simple, and maybe we'll talk about this later. And I spent most of my career as a detective. Just a simple investigation into, and you mentioned it too in your book, about, hey, is what you're feeling, are you struggling with it? Here's what some of the common responses to what you just endured, what you just went through. Here's what they look like, they sound like, and they feel like. And if you're experiencing these things, here are some positive ways to cope, right? If nobody raised their hand and they just heard that might have been the educational foundation for them, the foundation for them to now build a career on, even if they didn't raise their. So likely, to answer your question, probably not, maybe, but at least it would have been a good foundation to start your career with.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't think, the numbers still support that people believe that there's a stigma attached to it. And even though in the age of mental fitness and mental health awareness and, just the emotional intelligence with these kids. And again, when they're in academy, they're kids because we're older and retired. But I think it's coming a long way, but it's still, there's still a lot of work to be done. One of the quotes you alluded to in your book, and I'm going to butcher the quote, but paraphrasing here, it says, if, as skilled investigators, if we investigate ourselves, do you want to expand on that a little bit?
Absolutely. And thanks for asking. I worked with, some of, in my opinion, the greatest investigators. And we'd find ourselves, as I'm sure you did 10 times over, and others listening to this, inside what we call the box interviewing assistant. And if you walked in and you investigated this case with this particular individual for months, sometimes, cold case years, and now you had your shot at him or her, and you put in all this work, and they just said, hey, detective, I wasn't me. I didn't do it. Would you walk out? Would you say, thank you for your time and just walk out as if that was the end of it? You wouldn't. It's funny, but it's so true because you wouldn't do that. But
Yeah.
yet when you start to stumble in life after putting the work in you have to growing, becoming the man or woman or officer, mother, father, brother, what have you, the minute life pushes back, why would we walk out of that same room, right? Let's say, okay, I don't understand this. I don't know the answers to this. I don't know why the suspect did it. I don't know the answers to why I'm feeling and experiencing the things I am. Let me dig a little deeper, right? Sometimes, in retirement, we struggle as officers or first responders to find our place and how we can convert our skill sets in uniform over to now civilian life. I look at being an investigator, whether you're on patrol investigating a vehicle accident or you're a detective in the box or a homicide suspect, those same skills that made you so good at your job in uniform can be what makes you can be what makes you a great human off the job and outside of uniform. Can help your growth, can help your build your resilience and understanding of what you might be going through. So be that investigator with your own life struggles as you are on the job. And I hope that explains it a little bit. There's just one skill set that we have as uniforms to parlay into our own personal lives.
I'm glad you explained that. And I can't help but to think that, as first responders, we are helpers. And we're always looking to give everyone else the help. And we're looking to give answers. I find myself even today that knowing that I'm working on it, I having a conversation with my wife, and instead of just listening, I'm already looking for ways to solve the problem. When there's no solution or there was no input on what solution or how would you solve this, but we're very good at looking to help others and trying to find a fix for others. But we rarely, if ever, turn that on to ourselves. And I know when I first started, speaking to, as you read in the book, the doc, first started speaking with him, I was saying, I had this, one of my troops come up to me and said, hey, sir, can we talk? And, I gave him this advice and he prefaced all that with saying that as you get better, people are going to see that. You're not going to have to tell them. They'll see it and they're going to want a part of it. You'll be drawing people to you. I was like, yeah, whatever, doc. Yeah, science. It's dumb. But he was right because everything started changing and people started coming to me. And I was telling them about one of my deputies that came to me. And, I gave him this brilliant advice and he just sat there smiling the whole time. I'm like, am I paying this guy to smile? Because I mean, he's making his money today. But he said, let me ask you, why would you treat one of your subordinates or someone that you have no real vested interest in personally, other than a working relationship? Why would you give them better advice than you give yourself? Why are you treating them better than you treat yourself? I didn't have an answer for that. So I was like, shut up. Don't beat me up with logic. But we do that. We always look to settle someone else's issue, but we never look into ourselves. I think that's a critical thing that we need to do. And I think applying our investigative skills and continuing to ask why, and when we run out of whys, then ask the whens and the whos and everything else. There is so much in this book that I want to get into. And I listened to one of your podcasts. It was probably done about a year ago. And I've heard this term cultural competence. The first place I heard it was Travis Gribble from My Arena. And it really hit me the first time I heard it. It's like, man, I need to know more about this. And I've learned about it. I've used it in some of my posts, and cultural competence is a good thing. But I want you to, for the listeners, to explain your take on cultural competence, because I heard you and Barbara say something that cultural competence is a good thing, but not necessary. Would you be able to expand on that a little bit for the listeners?
Yes. And, I look at it at a couple of different angles, coming from, as we know, as a veteran and a first responder, there is value and importance in when somebody that's struggling finally says, hey, you know what, maybe let me explore what feeling better is. Let me just ask some questions. Let me open up myself to trusting somebody outside my circle to help me figure out what I can't figure out on my own. That in and of itself, I'll pause right there, is a massive step. So anyone that's listening that hasn't done it yet, but is even contemplating it, be happy with that. Look at that as a win, that you've at least started to change your perspective and allowed the possibility of feeling better into your life, right? You don't have to have done anything past that yet. Take that as a win and build on that, right? Don't think it as a defeat, that you just haven't done anything. You've been sitting on that. That's a win. So when you finally do sit down with that person and they understand, and I say understand, I'll explain, and you talk about this too in Hiding in Plain Sight, is there's certain things you don't have to elaborate on, right? Certain terminologies, and they'll vary from department to department or state to state. But generally, there's an understanding on what we as officers experience, from the vicarious trauma to the compassion fatigue to the what moral injury is, and the always having to cancel plans or alter plans with your family, or not being present with your family when you're actually physically there. And I talked about that in the book too, being so isolated mentally and emotionally that you might as well not be there. The things that are hard to convey to somebody that doesn't know this culture. It goes a long way. However, I think as officers, as first responders, we think that we are the only ones that could possibly understand what we're going through. And as a result of that, we shut everything else out, right? We shut everything else out. We only surround ourselves with like-minded people, with people, and I'm using air quotes, get us. And what we do is we lose out on so much value. And what that does too sometimes is it puts us in this looking for that person that's going to validate what we have in our heads, whether that be bad or good.
Yeah, we create our own echo chamber.
Echo chamber is a beautiful way to describe it, and we stay there.
Mm-hmm. And it becomes a doom loop. Depending on where you're at, it could become a doom loop.
So it's important that a therapist or a clinical professional has that general understanding of what we do as cultural competency, being competent in our culture, but they don't need to be. And I came from the behavioral health space. I worked for a behavioral health care company previously. There were some clinicians that had absolutely no, they were not officers, they were not first responders, they were not in the military, put any of my brothers and sisters in front of them before some that had that experience, right? So I saw firsthand, it was not a prerequisite. It was important, but not the end.
No, I love that. Everybody has value, and I love what you said. If you need help, there's no barrier to entry other than raising your hand and saying, I need help. There's no requisite number of calls or jobs you need to have handled or deployments or any of that stuff. It's just the fact that you need help and you realize that's a win. I agree with that 100%. I in my book, and again, I'm only keep going back to that because, well, it's what I know and you keep saying it too. But I looked at it when I first got done with it, and it's what it's become to me has changed several times. And I was looking for a lane to be in this space, and it's turned out that I'm on a highway again because there's so many different ways that we can proceed with this. And one of the things that I realized, and I know that you've mentioned this in interviews and the way you speak of Veronica, that I look at my spouse, Michelle, as my first line culturally competent person, my first responder. And I think being able to share those things and have open communication with the people in your household will do a lot in changing, or at least helping the way that you show up when you get back from being on shift, or even after you retire, which has been the transition for me has been, now it's incredible, but it was dark for a lot of months. Yeah. I also want to talk to you about I want to talk to you about your faith. And you said something before we started recording, and it's like, yeah, there's a faith message in there. So how has that played a role during your career or since you've retired and moving forward?
Yeah, and first and foremost, thank you for asking. A lot of people are, and myself included at a point in time, was reluctant to be vocal about my faith. Um, and I grew up Catholic upbringing. I grew up in Long Island, New York, going to church every Sunday. I was an altar boy. Um, And throughout my career, I would say I've heard people say I'm a practicing Catholic, or yeah, I go to church, and I fell into that category. And throughout the latter part of my career, when I was in my the tumultuous part of my career, the really I say the bad times, I wanted to revisit that. I wanted to find that space again. And for a long time, I felt like I needed to get right. I needed to get better in order to go back to God, and not realizing it while I was in it that I had that completely backwards, that I needed to go to Him first in order to get right and to get better. Uh, that was a long process, and I've I've heard it said before. I've said it before in different ways. Is that we're going to keep learning these lessons. We're going to keep getting these lessons until we learn them. Um, and things aren't going to always go right for us, and they weren't going right for me. What I thought right was, but in fact, they were right. They were exactly what I needed. As hard or as hurtful as they were exactly what I needed to ultimately get me to where I am today. And that is a unabashful uh, um, sharing of what got me here, and that's God. That is the only reason I'm here. That is the only reason why Veronica is still with me today. That is the only reason why my children are where they are, and that's right with me today. That is the only reason why I am allowed. He allows me to do the things that I'm trying to do with Living Blue, with Living Blue Apparel, with anything that I do is because of him. And all those things that happened in my life and my career prior to today weren't happening to me; they were happening for me. And we don't always see that. And people forget that. Just touching on resilience, people forget that that's the only place we can learn and build resilience. The only time it happens, it does not happen when things are going well. So I learned to get excited when things got uncomfortable, because I was able to then I was able to see that something good is in this. Now it's that investigative mind. What can I find from this? Instead of, this is burying me, life sucks, this is terrible. Where it now shifted into, all right, what does this have for me? And that was only because of my faith. And today I'm a I'm a Christian. I have found my place where I know I'm supposed to be in my faith, and what has really just been the it's my foundation. It's my strength that everything flows from, and I only pray that others can find that. And yeah,
I have absolutely nothing to add to that. I don't think that I'm going to receive a better answer to any question for the rest of our interaction today. Uh, that was fantastic, Jason. Thank you for that. Every word that you said rings that rings in my life. I hear people say, and I've adopted it myself, that nothing happens to me; it happens for me. And to look, where's the lesson that I should be learning here? And why couldn't I have learned it the last two times? So yeah, that's wow. I recently came to those conclusions myself. You know, like you, I was raised in the church and around the church and everything, and you know, I had been christened and baptized and raised my hand in church, and had the pastor say, "Yeah, we see you, and you eat the awful cracker and all that stuff and the grape juice. You do every bit of it, but for the majority of my life, my adult life, I was just kind of phoning it in. I would go to church every once in a while just to get filled with being around good people, but it was never something done in earnest. I felt I had to do it because, well, I want to be around good people today, so let's go to church today. And then they'd start singing, and I don't like to sing, so I would just stand there. It's like, I'm so uncomfortable here. I looked at it for what it was, the incremental bowls of chicken soup for the soul. But when I retired, before I retired and went through the break and some of the issues that I went through at the end of my career, I was looking for the bigger thing. And I was blind to it, really, because I was still in the job. I was still in the funk, trying to figure my way out of that. And it wasn't until after I retired and went through another period of darkness, looking for mission and purpose, and which brought me to Living Blue and emotional survival and surviving retirement. So many books that I've read of just people that are in this space right now, and I started paying attention to what I was bringing into my life, whether it was the news or social media or the people in my own circle. My tribe got smaller, and you have to look at those things that you're bringing into your life. And the people that I was surrounding myself with became in a place where it looked like they were pulling away from me, like, not like, hey, get away from me, but they were moving so much further and so much more fulfilled than I was. It's like, man, I'm doing the work. I'm working on me. I'm running. I'm eating my vegetables, taking my vitamins. I'm doing everything that I should be doing. And then I stopped for a moment and started looking into the things that they were doing that I was not. What is the work they're doing that I have not been doing? And once I got to that point, the message really became very, very clear to me. And it was when I was getting to the completion of the manuscript for Hiding in Plain Sight that I looked at the lessons in there. I'm here for one thing. I was this, and he saved me. I needed a person to help me. He sent her. I was undeserving of all of these things, and he saved me. Then I looked at all these people that I was following and people that were influencing me. And, as they say in this realm, these guys and gals were 10Xing, everybody was leveling up. And I realized, I finally heard something that they had been saying all along: their faith, their walk in faith. And whatever it was, they relied on that. They stopped drinking in some cases. They stopped doing these things and doing the things that they shouldn't have been doing, and got right with their faith. It was like, man, that's the only thing I'm not doing. And that became the central things that I was being fed day and day after. And finally it hit me. It's what I'm missing. September 9th was the day I made a call to a friend and said, hey man, this is what I'm feeling. It's on my heart. And here's where I've gone wrong. Here's where I want to get right. What do I do? And he says, well, it's easy, brother. Pray with me. And since that, we're not without our bad days because we're human beings, but this journey has been that much richer and that much easier. As you said, when you're supposed to learn those things and when these things are supposed to happen, that's when they happen, not on your time. So I'm glad that you brought that up, and I'm glad to have that connection. And I think that's a powerful message for anybody who's listening.
Yeah, and if I could just add something too, and this might sound crazy, what does baptism have to do with police work, right? I'm going to tell you, I'm going to tell you how I look at it. And you said something that I just want to touch on real quick. You said I was looking at what other people were doing and identifying, well, what wasn't I doing? That right there is the power that other people's actions and behaviors and sharing of their stories have on other people that are watching, right? And so that goes back to what's the correlation between baptism and that, right? Baptism is not required, but it's important. It is like a wedding ring, right? We wear the wedding ring not to not to stay married. It's to show other people our commitment and our bond with that person in our life. That's what baptism is. It's showing that bond and that connection and that relationship that we have with God, right? So it's to show other people. That's what baptism is. It's a profession of your faith to everybody else. And when we share our stories through our books, through podcasts, through saying, "Hey, I'm a leader, I'm a supervisor, I'm in charge, but guess what? I'm here to listen to you. I'm here to share with you. I'm here to walk your journey next to you on your journey." That allows others to say, "You know what? I want to learn more. I want to know more about what he's got." Um, so I look at, I bring that up as a lesson, because I recently got rebaptized with my wife and kids. I was baptized as a Catholic as a baby, where I had no choice in doing so. It was checking the box. It was, this is what we're going to do. We're going to receive all the sacraments in the order in which we're supposed to receive them. But as an adult, I made the decision to say, I'm going to do something. I'm control over it now, and I'm choosing to show everybody else what gives me my strength. And when we do that as cops, as first responders, as veterans, as active duty military, we're allowing other people that are watching us to see what we have that they can have as well. And I will end with, that doesn't mean we're not going to have any further problems, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're going to continue to come, but you're going to be able to now handle them in a completely different way than you had been before.
No, absolutely. Well, I was wrong. You gave a better answer. So, this is man. So let's move past this, because I think that we can bat this back and forth all day. Your transition from into retirement and this now mission that you're on, what did that look like? I mean, veterans leaving one tribe, going into the NYPD, which can be said by anybody who's been in there, and of course anybody who is just an onlooker. NYPD is its own thing. The amount of esprit de corps, the swag and the merchandising, the shows and everything else. I mean, was it 40,000 cops? And I heard a rumor, and I never checked into this, that it's like the world's 8th largest standing army or something like that. I mean, that's a heck of a tribe to leave. And, again, you're the 9/11 class. I mean, that's something that not everybody can wear. And that's, a shared hardship with a lot of people, and a good career. And what a lot of people would think, post 9/11, that is the height of NYPD, with everything that you were doing with training, the job that you were doing, and everything else. The point I'm getting to was it hard for you to leave that and strip away Detective Jason Palamara from Jason and who you're supposed to be, or who you are now?
Excellent question. And though I felt towards the end of my career, I was much more positioned to make that transition a lot more comfortable for myself. Had I retired any earlier than that, and I was still going through the, like I say, the bad time, it still brought with it its own complexities and problems. And I'm still on the journey. I'm retired 4 years, I think, and I'm still on that journey. So I've said this before, and it bears repeating over and over again. When we forget that we're human beings that happen to wear this uniform, and not cops that happen to be human beings, we'll be in a better place. We're human first. And for a long time, I was Detective Jason Palamara, right? And that was my everything. Instead of it's something I did. It was a big part of who I was, but it was not who I am. My gun belt is hanging in my office, and I have my swag in my office, right? But it's been taken off, and it's a part of my story. It is not my whole story. And when we make it our entire existence, and that is damaged, and I'll tell you something, I got to the angry part of your book because I started getting angry for you, and I think you know where in your book I'm talking about.
Pick a page, man. Pick a page.
Yeah, I got about 30 pages left, and we're done with the disciplinary stuff, and I was getting angry. And when things like that happen, it now damages our persona and who we are, right? You could talk about that with politics, right? It's like when somebody attacks who you believe to what you believe to be your everything, that's a dangerous place to be. And that's where a lot of fighting happens. And that fighting could be with ourselves. When somebody damages what we believe to be our everything, there's a lot of inner turmoil that happens there. You know, we have so many questions. My transition was assisted in positively, if this makes sense, because of COVID. Because I was thinking and getting ready to possibly retire. We had some relocation plans, the family and I, and COVID kind of, as you know, shut everything down. We weren't allowed to go out on our cases. We weren't allowed to investigate the way we investigate, whether that be in-person interviews or, you know, traveling, what have you. So we kind of were paused. We were in a holding pattern, and that allowed me to kind of really take stock on what am I doing now. At the time, I had become a peer counselor with the NYPD's peer team. I was doing the crisis work. I was doing the John Maxwell stuff, and I started to identify more with the behavioral health space than what I will always look back on as the most amazing time on the job, and that was in cold case. And it was said many times, you're going to know when it's time to retire. And I knew at that moment that, you know what, I think it might be. So COVID and the slowing things down really helped the transition, but it didn't 100% prepare me. I was retired not long before 2 officers were murdered in New York, and I was thousands of miles away, relocated, and it was difficult to watch that happen and not be a part of it.
Yeah.
And I struggled with it. But for folks to understand, you're never out of the game. And that, what I mean by that is pick up the phone and call somebody and say, hey, brother, sister, I just want to check on you. Hey, I know this just happened. You know, just, you don't even have to talk about it, just a call, just the proverbial knock on the door and say, hey, I'm still here, even though I'm retired. And that goes both ways. That could go a long way in letting somebody know that they're not alone and that there's still support out there. So you can still be part of it, but not have to be doing your video canvases or your interviews or standing around waiting to get deployed to do something after a critical incident. You can still be immersed in your blue world in retirement. It's just in a different way. And I struggled.
Yeah.
Sometimes I do still struggle with finding what that looks like. But you know what? Like I said before, the way I look at it now and the lens in which I look through is completely different. It's a bit more positive than everything's negative lens. So it's still a transition, and I think it always will be.
I'm glad you said that because, you know, you said you're 4 years into this and you're still working it out. And first thing I thought to myself was, oh, man, I'm 16 months into this. This is going to suck. But, you know, I'm a different person every single day through this transition and through this growth and the projects and purpose and speaking with folks like you. Yeah, it is a process trying to figure out who you were always supposed to be and who you are without that persona. And I've been very clear on any interview I've done. And of course, they're in the book. I had a problem with over-identification and over-commitment. I didn't put that in the book to spark anger in anybody else. I put it there to show where I went wrong. That had I gotten help or had I not been so enmeshed in the persona and overcommitted with the profession that, yes, it would have been distasteful, but my response to all of that, it hurt. It hurt. You know, it felt like betrayal, even though, you know, there was punishment due. And whether it was righteous or not, it's none of my business. But, you know, again, that's only in the book because it's part of my story. It's one of the things that happened for me. I don't want to give it away, but, you know, like you said earlier, you know, you keep learning the lesson or you repeat the lesson until it's learned. And I was not learning the lesson of being able to pull myself out of that persona and to figure out who Doug is and just be Doug. So someone else made that decision for me, and I'm grateful for that. So I had this conversation just the other day with John Kelly, and he's like, "Bro, I am so mad." I'm like, "Whoa, stop! I get it. And I didn't write it for anybody to be mad. I wrote it in there just for it is what it is. You draw the conclusions that you're going to draw from it. But yeah, the off ramp to retirement and the transition to figure all of those things out. One of the biggest things I said is you're this thing or these things for 30, 31 years. And you turn in all your kit, you get a slice of cake, you wake up the next morning and you got to figure out, what am I now? Or what is this? And I have found out the answer to that is anything you want to be. It's a powerful place to be in, but it doesn't come to you the next day. It's a process. So, I'm glad to know that 4 years into the process, it's still a process. So that's good. Growth is always good.
Yeah. And I brought up that part in the book, and I think everyone can share in that there's times in their lives that those similar type situations have happened, right? I've had disciplinary situations on the job, and of course, in the moment, it's terrible, and it's very difficult to have the perspective that we have now today. But you said something about being pulled out of, somebody reminded you that Doug is what's most important, not all of that noise around Doug. And you weren't able to pull yourself out of it, I think is what you said. So you were pulled out of it. And I think we know who that was. And it was, hey, Doug, I need you to focus here. You're not focusing here. And again, I'm going to keep pushing you, but ultimately you have to decide on your own what you want to focus on. I'm going to help you, and that's free will. And that's you choosing. All we get is those nudges, and those nudges sometimes hurt.
Yeah, no, they do. And, I found that in retirement, being still and enjoying some of the quiet, not going into another job or another, career field the following Monday. But I think that quiet space has allowed me time to sort that stuff out and figure out what the answers to those are. Yeah, it can be sobering, to say the very least. Yeah. So, you know what? Let's talk about what you and Veronica are doing now at the Living Blue Apparel. I got to hear about that because, again, I love your coffee mug. So I don't have a coffee mug yet, but
that's for anyone who can see. That's to the ones who didn't make it back home. It's a Blue Line flag. It has. Living Blue Apparel came from Living Blue, the name of our book. And Veronica, my wife, is the one behind the name, right? Like anything else good in my life, she's behind it, in some form or another. So she came up with the name of the book, which became the name of the apparel company, Living Blue Apparel. And it stems from just the continual drive to want to do more, and whatever we can to help strengthen the health and wellness of our culture. And whereas in our culture, we wear a bunch of, buff shirts. I don't know if you guys had buff stuff down in Florida. But our buff gear, our swag, you said before. And there's a lot of folks out there doing it. What's behind Living Blue Apparel is that behavioral health piece, is that resilience and that growth piece. That's what drives us. So when you see somebody wearing our t-shirt or drinking out of one of our coffee mugs or a hat, you have a silent reminder that they're one of me. They're on the same team, or they're married to somebody on the same team, or they're the son or daughter of somebody on the same team, or a mother or father. And it's a reminder that you are not alone. You might never know that person's name. You might never speak to that person, but you pass them. And it's a reminder that you're not in your own little bubble by yourself. And if that's all it does, then the whole thing is a success. And what we just created was a new resource section on the site. I personally don't know of another apparel company that has a resource section for behavioral health resources for our culture, whether it be financial or behavioral health or fitness. A whole number of things. And we're slowly starting to build that portion of it. So when you're buying a shirt and you're going through whatever you're going through and you stumble across the resource tab, maybe you click it. Maybe you don't. Maybe you come back and click it later. Maybe a screenshot. Maybe you write down the number or the email address. Maybe you visit the website that it brings you to. And maybe a month from now or 6 months from now, you say, you know what? You take your shirt out of your closet. And I remember there was resources on there, and maybe you use them. And that's the hope. The hope is that through something so simple as what you put on your body can help you grow and help you get to a better place, then we're cooking with gas. Then it's a success. So, yeah, that's Living Blue Apparel in a quick little nutshell.
I love it, man. It's I was having a conversation with somebody just yesterday about some things going on in the medical world for treatments for PTS and sleeplessness and stuff like that. And I told her, I said, it was great to me because I didn't know anything about this. But then when we did our telehealth, you started nerding out on all the science. And it was so funny because, you have a medical professional that she was so animated and so excited, and it's going to do this and it does this. And here's the numbers. And I said, the excitement of people talking about what it is they're doing and their passion, when that passion comes through, it gets everybody else excited about the project. And, your explanation of Living Blue Apparel, I mean, this is what you do, man. You're excited about it. I mean, the corner in your office is nothing but Living Blue and Living Blue Apparel. And you are Living Blue, and you are Living Blue. So, I mean, it's pretty awesome to see that you still have this passion for the culture and for the people that you're trying to help. Very cool. I appreciate that. I want to know just for myself. There's a lot of folks that are transitioning out of the first responder world and the military world that are looking for, how to do that transition and what to do next. And, you have written a book, you have the apparel company, you're a speaker, John C. Maxwell trained. And, as far as I'm concerned, that's Jason Palamara. I love your website. It's everything about it and everything you're doing seems to be winning. What advice, if you could give one bit of advice to, somebody transitioning out, looking to be an entrepreneur, what would that be?
Invite others in to your journey, and surround yourself with folks that might not have share that same culture or tribe with you, right? Non-law enforcement, non-first responder, non-military. Living Blue, the book, is the result of me stepping outside my comfort zone and reaching out to a complete stranger in Barbara, pitching her some wacky idea to write a book together because I had been writing, and her being just as crazy to accept the offer, and years later have built a friendship with one another, and we're on this journey together. It came from stepping outside my comfort zone, and my wife saying, Jason, just call her. Just reach out to her. What's the worst she can say? Right. And there's she's behind everything again. I know you can attest to the same thing. Mm-hmm. It's, listen, get uncomfortable to get comfortable. And my advice would be get uncomfortable, right? Be curious about, well, what don't you know? Read about people that have gone through it. It does not have to be in the first responder military field. Read about other people and their journeys. Listen to other people and their journeys. When you stop learning, you stop growing, and you stop moving forward. And you could move forward, and you could fall on your face moving forward, but you're going forward, right? You might have a couple of bumps and bruises, but those will be your lessons as you keep going. So surround yourself with people that can help you be a better version of yourself every single day. Barbara was that for me. And I continue to find people that can teach me. Never think you know everything about what it is that you're doing. I didn't know a thing about the apparel world. I didn't know a thing about building a website, or all the back end work that gets put into being an entrepreneur and growing a business. But what I was really good at, and what I was good at as a detective, and we go back to how do you parlay that? I was good at putting people in places to do things that I have absolutely no business doing, nor have any knowledge base to do them, right? If I was investigating a homicide, which is what I was mostly doing, and it involved other things, I wouldn't bring those detectives in to help me enhance what I was doing, my kids. That is a skill set, bringing in other people to help you. And that could be parlayed into to your mental health, right? Bringing other people in to help you grow. Stay a constant learner in retirement. And things aren't going to always happen the way you want them to. Maybe about 4 months ago, I had been working for that behavioral healthcare company, and they let me go, right? Organizational growth. It was just the way things were moving, and that's the hand I was dealt. So I had to adjust and adapt. And of course, that wasn't my real choice. But it created a path that now opened up other doors. And you're not going to see those doors in retirement right away. Mm-hmm. You can't see those paths right away. Know that they're there, and you create. They're not created for you. You create them. Determine it upon how you look at what's thrown. And I know I threw a whole bunch out there, so
no, and I'm glad you did. It's a conversation that keeps coming up, the whole transition and moving from one to the next. And, you lose your tribe, you lose your circle, you lose your mission, your purpose, and all of the things that are all true. But I think what first responders and veterans forget, or just haven't been reminded of, how do I parlay this cop speak or first responder speak into civilian business speak? Well, we laugh at it because we're very practical people, and I don't know how that. Wait, what do you mean? You spearheaded this or that? It's just what I did. No, settle down. Got to learn how to speak to them. They'll learn how to speak to you at the same time. But I think what we forget or haven't been reminded of recently is, of all the things that we've experienced and all the things that we do, our ability to make decisions based on imperfect or incomplete information and get the job done, despite confusion and policy and command and who's doing this. And it's always the troops on the ground that always get the job done, despite everything else. You're part of that. You've been part of that. You spent 5, 10, 20, 30, 40 years solving problems in really, really crappy situations. You can do anything. I had been told for years, hey, you should write a book. I'm too lazy for that. I'm not an author. And here we are. I still believe some of that, but I'm going to start a podcast. Really? Yeah, I knew nothing about any of this stuff, and I'm finally finding quickly that by continuing to ask why and ask for help, just like you said, I'm getting to a point where I'm not bad at it. Not good. I'm working on it. But that's great advice, man. I'm not going to ask you for your parting thoughts yet, because again, you said you wanted to talk about my book, and since it's better to do this face to face than over text, and I actually told you when you texted me the other day, no, well, save this for the show. Don't tell me. So here I am, man. Hit me with it. If you found a typo, that was not my fault.
Well, let me tell you, it's funny you say that. Barbara told me the hardest part of the process was the editing process. Until that process began, that I realized how hard that was. What starts out as all of this gets edited down to this, and things change. It's difficult, but I will honestly tell you, I have not found a typo. And the only reason why I'm aware of them now is because I authored a book myself, and I now see, I visually, when you buy a car, all you see is the car on the road, right? So I see those things quicker now than I would have before. Mm-hmm. I have not. And I have about 30 pages left, and I have a page front and back worth of notes and highlights on where to go back to read again. I've went from having to put down the book because I was getting honestly teary-eyed and emotional, and I felt like reading was picking at stuff that I hadn't thought about. And just the simple fact that I'm reading this and I'm like, Doug was experiencing some of the same hurt and pain that I and other people go through. And it was just that raw. I hate when I hear other people hurting. So when I read your hurt, that hurt me. in a compassionate, empathetic way. Because I felt like I was in the story with you, and authors can't always do that. I've We've all read plenty of books. Your book brings you right into the story. The way you write it, you're right there next to you as you're saying it, if that makes sense. And
That was the intent. I told my editor, we're not taking anything out, find typos. And that was it. This manuscript, the book now, had been polished so many times by me. I did it all myself. And it was done not with the intent to bring people along with me, but to tell the story and tell this story. And I'm glad it landed that way. So thank you for that.
Yeah. And you had responded back to me last week or a couple of days ago when we were texting about, so many pages into whatever, there's going to be lessons. This entire book is filled with lessons. And if the lesson, and it's not, it's much more than this, but if the lesson is just simply, whether it's your book or Living Blue, if the lesson is just simply, oh, I'm not the only one that went through these types of things, that's a huge, impactful lesson. This isn't just a book. Our books are not just books about war stories. The simple fact of sharing those stories and now seeing where you are and where we are today is in and of itself an example of you too can climb that mountain.
Yes.
You too can do that. So I'm just really enjoying it, brother. I'm almost done. And it is definitely, my wife's already said when you're done, I'm getting it. I want to read it. So she'll read it next. And I think it'll be very impactful for her as well.
Well, it's killing me now. I got to know what's on that piece of paper.
Oh, I could send you a copy of it. I got pages. I got you talking about persona. When you talk about trauma based on perspective, we talked about perspective before. Did you reference Job? Excuse me, Job. I said Job. I wrote it down. Job on page 19, you reference. I don't know if that was, if I read it wrong, or if that was a biblical reference. So on and so forth. I got so many notes here. What impacted me, and what has really kind of just got my brain and my emotions stirring. So I don't have the tabs, definitely have the underlining. You'll find where I'm talking about. I'll send you a copy of it.
Well, but now that we've had this talk, you can text away and ask questions, everything else. It's one of the more enjoyable things, having put this out here, man. It's, I'm sure you felt the same thing when Living Blue went live. The power that I found in, one, sitting down journaling, and the journal is not this book. This book is the lessons learned from the journaling. And I keep looking over there because it's sitting on right next to your book on my desk. It's turned into so many things since I finished it, but I found that storytelling, and something I found out from Scott Mann, who I'm a big fan of. He's author and been on TEDx and all that stuff, but he's retired Lieutenant Colonel Green Beret. And the power of storytelling and owning your journey first, finding your voice and using that voice and putting everything out there. It's a strength that I have never experienced before. In that book, it's my greatest professional mistake and embarrassment. It is my weakest moment as a husband, as a father, as a man, as a human being. But I have found so much power in that type of honesty, and being able to answer questions or talk about it or hear people's feedback. There's something that everyone has picked out of it that I didn't even see when I put it together. So, and now going back and looking at that, I'm like, wow, there's a lesson there too that I missed. And there's going to be a second book to talk about the lessons within these lessons and the lessons that I have learned since putting a pin in this project, and that I found out about the project. There's so much there that, yeah, man, it's been a great experience. And I will tell you that Living Blue and the gift of Jason Palamara owning his journey and stepping out, was a huge impact on me putting pen to paper and seeing this through. There were a handful, and you know, you may see your name as you continue into hiding in plain sight. But yeah, man, it's been a journey, and I'm so grateful to you and other people in this space that have used heavy footsteps and stomped down the grass, showing me the path, and so many others. So with that, my friend, do you have any parting thoughts for us?
Well, that's why we have the first name as living, because it's a living, breathing, evolving thing. It's not a book that just sits and remains the way it is. It takes on its own form for the person who picks it up, and it'll affect somebody differently, like yours, dependent on who's holding it and how it enters, where it enters their journey. It'll affect everybody differently, and it's a living, breathing thing. It has created a friendship with you that was non-existent prior, right? And that'll continue to happen, and will continue to affect one another's lives and the people that listen to us and read our book. And wouldn't it be amazing, inspire somebody else to not pick up a pen or start typing? So
Yeah.
that's why the word living is there, because we need to keep living, and we need to, I'd be remiss if we didn't touch on the amount of loss that we experience on this job in losing one another, because we haven't been able to find our way out of our dark holes. That's why that word living is there on the book and the apparel company, to living. I want us to keep living. And sometimes that living is hard and it's hurtful and there's absolutely no hope. And it feels like your walls are closing in around you and you're getting suffocated and you can't breathe. And there's an elephant sitting on your head and there's absolutely no way out of the problems that you're experiencing. But you know what? So many of us have found that path out. And I want our brothers and sisters to grab onto us and, at least, like we talked about it before, acknowledge, I don't have an answer to this. I have absolutely no idea how I'm going to get out of this, but I want to know. And that want is your curiosity, and that's all you need. Hang on, hold on to somebody, and it'll be okay. It might take a while. But again, I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about, suicide in our culture. And, if our books and others, like, because there's so many first responders that have done what we're doing, and are doing such an impactful job, and they're saving so many people from undue hardship. Hopefully that's what our books do, my friend. I'm so proud of you and your journey, now knowing it through your pages and your words. I am excited to continue to watch your journey, and I know our paths are going to continue to cross one another. And we were in different departments, different times, military at different times. But the power of sharing our story through our words and your podcast is what we're doing right now is evident on that at work.
Yes. No, this is the human condition. So our experiences may be different, but our reactions to them are very, very similar. So I'm so grateful for you and for your time today. Where can anybody find you?
Thank you for asking. Folks can go to, for me, info@jasonpalamara.org. You can email me direct. You can hop on my website, jasonpalamara.com. You can find the book there as well. Links to the apparel company, you can go straight to livingblueapparel.com. I'll tell you, folks, if you sign up for the newsletter, we have a monthly newsletter. You get 10% off your first order. We got a cool little special, a little swag giveaway next month for December. So livingblueapparel.com, and you could reach out to me directly. Those emails come right to me. There's no middle person. I love connecting with folks. So,
Well, Jason, I'm going to put all that stuff in the show notes too, so people can just go in there. I'll link it. But again, thank you for spending time with us. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Tell This Story. I hope Jason's experiences and insights have resonate with you. If you'd like to connect with Jason or learn more about his work, you can find him on LinkedIn and his website through the links in the show notes. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like, subscribe, leave a rating, and comment help us spread the word. You can also follow me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, or visit my website at dougwhiteofficial.com. We'd love to hear from you, whether it's constructive feedback, suggested guests, or topics you'd like us to cover. Thank you for tuning in to tell this story. We'll see you next time.